Hi, you guys. Uh, we have a fatherlessness problem in this country. I think anybody who denies that is in complete, literally, they're in denial because it's obvious. And they might not think that we have a lot of fatherlessness. What they deny is the problems that happen because of fatherlessness. And the other thing they deny is the reason for it. They think it's because all the dads are walking away. It's just not true. Welcome back to Far From Eden. Glad to have you here. If you're new, welcome. And everybody, please hit like and subscribe on your way in. I really appreciate it. So, we've talked about the problem with single motherhood and fatherlessness in the past. And as I've said before, the primary reason that we have a problem with fatherlessness is the promiscuity of women, because women are the gatekeepers of sex. So, the promiscuity of women and the frequency of women discarding men, divorcing because of feelings and all the other type of ridiculous non-reasons, right? Just getting rid of the fathers because of selfishness or whatever it is. It's never a reason big enough. People don't stay together like they used to. People don't go through the hard times together. There's going to be hard times. That's just how it is. That's why the marriage vows say for better or for worse, because it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. It will. That's life. Anyway, so there are a lot of problems that come with single motherhood, especially with young boys. And we've talked about that because they're the ones that end up going to prison. They're the ones that end up being violent because that is male nature run amok. Male nature run amok is Genghis Khan, right? Fighting everything and breeding everything. That's male nature run amok. On this channel, we usually talk about female nature run amok, but once in a while, we do need to bring up, well, what does male nature do when it's not kept in check? And that's kind of the extreme is Genghis Khan. So you got little mini Genghis Khans running around. And I found a video this morning, it was on my feed. I get the interesting feed. YouTube algorithm's like, I don't know this. And I'm like, this one's good, thank you. And it's basically about it's from Academy of Ideas is the channel that the video comes from, and it's Carl Jung's take on men being how men become trapped in an infantile state. I saw that title and I was like, well, I have had my theories on that based on when boys have a single mom, right? They don't have a real father figure. They don't have a leader. They don't have a man who allows him to get rough and tumble, allows the child to become masculine and learn what that means, learn how to, as Jordan Peterson says, be dangerous and control it. I'm probably like messing up that quote, but basically that's the idea is like learn how to become very dangerous, be a monster, but control it, right? And anyway, so this video touches upon that. I found it really fascinating because I want to learn more about you guys. I want to learn more, about what makes you tick and how we got here. And I ran it past a man just to be like, is this something? And according to him, it is something. So let's take a look. Hopefully you guys will find it interesting. Let me know in the comments because I always want to know what you all think about stuff, if it's helpful. And this is very fascinating to me because let's face it, it's not like we're headed in a direction where people are going to have children in a two-parent situation. We're not headed in that direction. So this problem is just going to get worse. Not only that, when we do have a two-parent situation, the father is pretty much neutered. He's not allowed to be the leader. He's not allowed to make decisions. He's not allowed to raise his son the way he sees fit. The single mom and the married mom who's like dominant, they want to protect the son from everything. It's like, oh, don't get hurt. Oh, that's scary. Oh, mommy will protect you. No, don't I don't think that's good. I just don't. I think that's bad. So let's do this. Did I do full screen and then take it off full screen? Or I can't, they always say, I think that must be full screen because it's not showing the rest of my crap, which thank goodness. Okay. Sorry, you guys. They say women can multitask. I'm not so sure about that at all. I think we just have ADHD, so we get distracted, and then okay, yes, this is on the right thing. Thank you for putting up with me and my lack of technological skills it's so simple. It's not like it's really technology. It's like, which button do I press? Anyway, let's take a look at this. Maybe.
A man can't go out the way he came in. A man has got to add up to something. In our previous series on Carl Jung and the manchild, we looked at why the phenomenon of the manchild is so prevalent in our times. We argued that due to the demise of the traditional family and an absence of rites of initiation, many boys lack male role models to show them the way to manhood, and so they are emerging into adulthood stuck in what the authors Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette called boy psychology. In this series, we are going to provide a guide for how to outgrow boy psychology and attain manhood. To do this, we are going to look away from contemporary Western culture, which is overwhelmed by ideas which view masculinity as toxic, and approach the topic of manhood from an anthropological point of view. Drawing from David Gilmour's classic book, Manhood in the Making, we will examine what differing cultures across the world have thought regarding the question, what does it mean to be a man? The purpose of this examination will be to isolate the traits, virtues, and attitudes essential to manhood, thereby creating a map of manhood we can use to outgrow our boy psychology and achieve the benefits which, cross-culturally, are the prerogative of the potent man. In the present crisis of masculinity, we do not need, as some feminists are saying, less masculine power. We need more, but we need more of the mature masculine. We need more man psychology. We need to develop a sense of calmness about masculine power so we don't have to act out dominating, disempowering behavior toward others.
Yep.
To begin, we must differentiate between biological maleness and manhood. Practically all cultures across the world acknowledge that a man is a biological male by virtue of being born with male reproductive organs. Manhood, on the other hand, is not defined by the presence of physical characteristics alone. It must be achieved. The Aboriginal Fox tribe of Iowa call the attainment of manhood the big impossible, which only the masterful few can attain. Unlike biological sex, manhood is not a given but a prize to be won. As the 20th
I've heard that before from you guys. Men have to earn their value, prove their value. Women just have value in societies. And it's interesting because this is cross-culturally. It's cross-culturally, it's anthropology, anthropological. Hey. And that is fascinating to me because that means people in the liberal arts, that means that it isn't a social construct. If it were a social construct, it would differ in different cultures and different times in different places. But since it doesn't, that would make it biological. That would mean it's in our DNA. Otherwise, it would be like, oh, well, this social did this and this did this, but they didn't. They're the same. And this has been, what men have had to do since the dawn of time. And I'm not telling you men anything that you guys don't already know. But I had to learn it as a woman. I learned it probably 5 years ago-ish. It's hard to know which truth I learned when, but I learned it, and it's a lot to be a guy. That's an understatement, I know.
century American author Norman Mailer wrote, "Nobody was born a man. You earned manhood provided you were good enough, bold enough, or as David Gilmour explains, there is a constantly recurring notion that real manhood is different from anatomical maleness, that it is not a natural condition that comes about spontaneously through biological maturation, but rather is a precarious or artificial state that boys must win against powerful odds. This recurrent notion that manhood is problematic is found among the simplest hunters and fishermen, among peasants and sophisticated urban people. It is found in all continents and environments.
Right. So it's found everywhere. And he said it's not biological. And I get what he means. Like you have, like as a man, you have to actually do it. It's not just going to be. Like as a woman, we just biologically are female, therefore we have value. We are valued amongst cross culturally, just like the men have to earn it. So I just want to put in this little tidbit, and you can ignore it if you want to, and that's totally fine. And a lot of you will, but it's not biological, but it's cross cultural throughout all time, throughout all cultures. What could it be? Sounds like whoever created this creation that we have, this earth and people and animals and life, made a certain order. It's almost like there's a certain order that things need to be in, and that if they're not in that order, it gets messed up.
To understand why it is almost universally accepted that real men are made, not born, we must investigate what cross-culturally is considered the greatest threat to manhood: psychological regression. In contrast to other animals who emerge into this world with a certain degree of autonomy, the first year of a human's life is spent in a prolonged state of dependence on the mother.
That's true.
Just as a fetus is contained physically in the mother prior to birth, in the first year of life, the infant can be said to be contained psychologically in the mother. From the perspective of the infant, the mother appears symbolically as the great mother. She is the child's world and the provider of love, security, warmth, protection, and the all-nourishing breast. After the first year of life, the child enters the stage which Margaret Mailer called separation individuation. The infant's growing awareness of itself as separate from the mother, coupled with an increase in physical mobility, marks the stage at which the child is expected to develop its autonomy and self-identity. While both girls and boys experience the growing pains associated with this stage of development, it is a stage which can prove especially difficult for boys. For while the girl's prior psychological immersion in the mother serves to promote her feminine identity, the boy, to achieve a masculine identity, must rescind his identification with the mother in the feminine world in order to enter the world of men. The special problem the boy
Wait a
faces
second.
at this point is in overcoming the
Wait a second. Yeah. In order to become a man, he has to detach from that relationship that he had with the mother, from that dependence. And I think that's what you don't do when you've got a single mother. Also, I'm reminded of Kevin Samuels telling a lot of women on the telephone that he was talking to that, a lot of single mothers who had sons, young sons, he'd ask, how old is the child? And he'd say, send him to his dad. Send them to his dad. Give custody to his dad. And he would say, if that boy is 5 years old and above, send him to the dad. And I actually was shocked at first. I was like, wow, that's younger than I would have expected. And then as I've done more research and I've watched Jordan Peterson talk about socialization of children between 2 and 4, et cetera, and what they need, and this man right now talking about this, I'm like, he was dead on. I mean, I'm not shocked. I when he said it, even though I was shocked, I was like, he's probably right, Kevin Samuels, because I understand that he knows more than I do, and being a man, he probably knows what's best for a son. Yeah, even though I'm a woman, I thought maybe I don't know what's best. I know that most of you men will be like, what? It's possible. Women can do that. They won't, but they can.
previous sense of unity with the mother in order to achieve an independent identity defined by his culture as masculine. The girl does not experience this problem as acutely, according to this theory, because her femininity is reinforced by her original symbiotic unity with her mother, by the identification with her that precedes self-identity and that culminates with her own motherhood. In most societies, the little boy's sense of self as independent must include a sense of self as different from his mother, as separate from her both in ego identity and in social role. Thus, for the boy, the task of separation and individuation carries an added burden and peril.
Yeah.
Throughout history, rites of initiation have assisted boys in the process of separation individuation. Through trials and tests overseen by male elders, the boy dies and is reborn a man.
Hmm.
Femininity unfolds naturally, whereas masculinity must be achieved. And here is where the male ritual cult steps in. But in the modern West, adequate
Interesting.
male role models capable of initiating a boy into manhood are few and far between. Many men are emerging into adulthood without having left the psychological womb of the mother, as a result of not being taught how to embrace struggle, become self reliant, and engage in the ceaseless enterprise which cross culturally is expected of the potent man. Many men are consumed by lethargy, the desire to evade reality, and escape danger by seeking solace at the mother's side. They are succumbing to what Thomas Gregor, in his study of the Mahunaku tribe of Brazil, referred to as the desire to take the path back to fusion with the mother and the pleasures of infancy. Or, in other words, they are consumed by what Carl Jung called the spirit of regression, who threatens us with bondage to the mother and with dissolution and extinction in the unconscious.
I watched a video yesterday of the cops got called out. There was some like disagreement with some younger people. Like I think they were in high school or young or very young adults. And I think he was like 16, so they were young. And the cops were there anyway, and they finally had to arrest this guy. Um, they were very patient with him, but they finally had to arrest him because he was acting erratically, and he had taken something of the girls and he wouldn't give it back, and a whole thing. He was he as soon as the police started to put cuffs on him, he was talking big and bad before that. And as soon as the cops, started to put cuffs on him, started to, not allow him to struggle and fight against them, and eventually had to take him to the ground because he was being so difficult, he was screaming bloody murder, and he was yelling for his mom, who was there. He did live with her. And she was literally standing right there. And he's yelling, "Mom, don't let them do this to me. Mom, it hurts. My arm hurts." I was like, and I mean, yeah. And this reminds me of that. That's like a blatant example of what this man is talking about. And I think it's a problem. And when these men who are stuck trying to get back into their mother's womb because they never had a man to lead them into manhood and to teach them to embrace the struggle that is life, they're not going to stand up to their wives. They're going to let their wives run all over them, and they're not going to be the man of their household. They're not going to lead. They're not going to anything. And it's like happens all over again. And I think we're there. There's some millennials that I'm like, oh my God, you're not in charge. Like they think they're equals. You're not an equal with your wife. She runs the show. And it's because your mom did, and you didn't become a man, and you don't have any idea.
In succumbing to the spirit of regression, we adopt lifestyles antithetical to manhood. One such lifestyle which Jung repeatedly warned of is what in mythological terms is referred to as the incestuous marriage to the mother, whereby one remains in the psychological womb of the mother well into old age. If this situation is dramatized, then there appears before you on the psychological stage a man living regressively, seeking his childhood and his mother, fleeing from a cold, cruel world which denies him understanding.
Yeah.
Often a mother appears beside him who apparently shows not the slightest concern that her little son should become a man, but who, with tireless and self-immolating effort, neglects nothing that might hinder him from growing up and marrying. You behold the secret conspiracy between mother and son, and how each helps the other to betray life.
Yeah.
Others consumed by the spirit of regression may break free from the psychological womb of the mother, only to adopt the lifestyle of Peer Gynt, which the psychologist Rollo May called the myth of males in the 20th century. Peer Gynt is the myth, that is, the life pattern, of a man characterized by two desires. One desires to be admired by women, and the other desires to be taken care of by the same women. The first desire leads to machismo behavior. A braggart, he swaggers and is grandiose. But all of this apparent power is in the service of pleasing the woman, the figurative queen, in order that the second desire be satisfied. These two desires are contradictory. The woman is the one who holds the final judgment and, correspondingly, the power over him.
Right.
No matter how much he appears to be the swaggering master with his various women, he is in reality a slave serving the queen. His self-esteem and his self-image depend upon her smile, her approval. The spirit of regression can also lead to the adoption of harmful lifestyles not centered around psychological dependence on a woman.
Was that what he just said, talking about pleasing the queen? That's being a simp, right? Isn't that what he's talking about? Isn't that like, is this how you make a simp? I really want to know your guys' opinion on that, because it sounded like that to me. And I don't like saying it, calling men names. I don't like that. But hear me when I say that the man became that because he didn't have a father. And he probably didn't have a father because the woman originally, she's the gatekeeper to sex. So she allowed a man who either was not father material to inseminate her, or someone inseminated her and she got rid of him. At the end of the day, my opinion, that this whole issue lays at the feet of the woman. That is her fault. Because when women were not this sexually promiscuous, we didn't have this problem.
As Eric Neumann argues in his book, The Fear of the Feminine, World Weariness, Neurotic Sickness, or the placid acceptance of the commonplace in the attempt to avoid struggle, can all signify that the spirit of regression is active in our mind. Regressions of this sort give rise not only to typical anxiety neuroses and phobias, but also, and especially, to addictions and, if the ego is extensively destroyed, to psychoses. To break free from the spirit of regression and move towards manhood, we need to cultivate a heroic attitude. This attitude has been expressed in countless myths, one of the most notable being the dramatic tale of Tannhäuser and Venus. In this myth, the knight Tannhäuser is approached by the beautiful goddess Venus, who asks him to join her on the mountain Venusberg, where she promises his every desire will be satisfied by her and her attendants, the Naiads and Sirens. Tannhäuser accepts her offer and remains in this paradisal feminine world for a year, but soon he grows weary and is overcome by an intense moral conflict. Should he remain on Venusberg where his every wish and desire for pleasure is fulfilled, or should he renounce this passive independent life and once again embrace meaningful struggle in the world? After agonizing deliberation, Tannhäuser decides to leave Venusberg. I must return to the world of men. I stand prepared for battle, even for death and nothingness. Commenting on this myth, David Gilmour writes, "The knight has mastered the most primitive of the demands of the pleasure principle, the temptation to drown in the arms of an omnipotent woman, to withdraw into a puerile cocoon of pleasure and safety." In the next video in this series, we are going to examine in more detail what the heroic attitude entails and how we can cultivate it to escape psychological regression. By exploring how cultures across the world conceive manhood, we will construct a map of heroic manhood we can use in our quest to mature beyond the limiting confines of boy psychology. As we do, we will also learn why the claim that masculinity is toxic is not only misguided but dangerous. For manhood is not a tool of oppression.
No.
It is rather a cultural construct intended to promote.
It is not a tool of oppression at all. I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick of that lie. That's the short that I released today that everybody freaked out about. I got a few comments. I'm still getting used to the haters. But yeah, like manhood is not for oppression. It is the opposite. Good God.
Promote the psychological development of boys into men capable of supporting the security and prosperity of a society.
Exactly.
When the ideals of manhood are lost or distorted, a society becomes prone to dissolution at the hands of internal and external threats.
Boy, is that
As
true.
the often quoted saying by Michael Hopp puts it, weak men create hard times.
Yep.
Or as David Gilmour summarizes, real men are expected to tame nature in order to recreate and bolster the basic kinship units of their society. That is, to reinvent and perpetuate the social order by will, to create something of value from nothing. Manhood is a kind of male procreation. Its heroic quality lies in its self direction and discipline.
Yeah.
Its absolute self reliance, in a word, its agential autonomy.
Wow. That was great. That was really good. What do you guys think about all of that? What do you agree? Have you experienced anything like that? Have you seen any of that in yourself? Um, I'm so fascinated to know. And how do you, and as a man, how do you? Because if you don't have that fatherhood figure and that person to help teach you to embrace the meaningful struggle. I mean, this is why so many people listen to Jordan Peterson and say to Dr. Peterson, "You saved my life." It's this seems to be a really important topic, a really important issue. And it just seems like we're not getting it as a society. And another problem with this whole thing that I thought of there at the end was what men do is they tame nature. They order society against the odds. They do that so that society will run and that we will have like what we have in the United States is generally a very safe society. I understand that Gen Z and some millennials and some Gen Xers are going to say it's not safe, blah blah blah. I'm talking about compared to all other times and all other cultures in all of history, which I guess I said all other times, but you know what I'm saying? Like everywhere and everybody, all in all time, like this is really safe. The fact that I, as a single woman, can live alone, it means that we have a safe society. And that's because of the men who created it and ordered it. However, now we have a different situation where we don't have boys coming into manhood, which means we have a lot of weak men out there. And as the narrator on that video just said, that can create a dissolution of society. And we see that. We see that happening. We see it happening, and we see no possible way to turn it around because you cannot turn around this feminism. It will not turn around. The only way it turns around is industrialization goes away, where women go, oh crap, because they're never going to admit it. They're never ever going to humble themselves. It will take them being humbled, and I do not look forward to that day. I do not look forward to that day because I am one of the ones that knows what's coming. And it's pretty scary. But at the same time, it's a necessary correction that society is just going to, do. It's literally its nature going to correct itself. And I think that this issue is the reason. But we don't get here without feminism. We don't get here without single moms. We don't get here without fatherlessness. And we don't get fatherlessness without feminism. So it goes back to it. And I would happily discuss this with anybody who disagrees with me. Happily. People get on here and they call me names and they say internal misogyny is real. Okay. Would you like to have a discussion? No. Nobody wants to have a discussion who disagrees with me. They just want to call me names. They just want to make accusations. And they don't want to have a discussion. And they can't remain calm. When I see things that I disagree with, when I see the feminist stuff, I don't get angry at them. The only time I get angry is when they start attacking men. Then I get angry. But I don't call them names or whatever because I know they're wrong. And I'll happily discuss it with them without name calling, without assuming, without personalizing anything. But they can't do that. And we know why. So please let me know what you thought of that video. If you want to see more content like this, let me know. I want to do things that are helpful. And I learn from it. So it's helpful for me. And I will see you guys on the next one. Please take care and be well.